On the previous video, I explained how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide functions algebraically. We were not doing any substitution of numbers into those functions that we found. But on this video, this is what we're going to talk about, right? So for example, well, I'm going to write my functions again, right? F of x equals 3x squared, the same function that we worked with on the previous video. And g of x equals 4 plus x. And then one of the questions that were given there on slide 14 is calculate f plus g of -2. So the normal rules of functions will say I will have to take the number -2 and substitute into whichever my f plus g function is. And this is what we're going to be doing. Okay, so we take that number and we substitute in the required function, right? F plus g. So first of all, we have to find what my f plus g function is. So there's two ways to do this, right? There's two ways. I'm just gonna write this in here. There's two ways. Take -2 and substitute on the f plus g function, or find f of -2 first, so substitute into the f function, and find g of -2. So take the -2 and substitute into the g function, and then subtract those two, or add in this case, add those two results. Right. I think it's easier to do this second way. So this is what we're going to be doing on this case, because I believe it's easier. It's less probable that we lose signs in the process, especially for subtractions and divisions. We tend to mess up a lot of signs in that process. So we're going to take this second approach in here. So to find f plus g of -2, the first thing that I have to find is f of -2, and then add g of -2. So this is the process that we're going to be doing. Find f of -2, find g of -2, and then those two results, add them up. Okay, so let's find f of -2. So f of -2 means I have to take the -2 and substitute into my f of x function, which is this function at the top. So instead of the x squared, I'm going to do -2. -2 squared minus 2. So substitute into the f of x function, Then we're going to do PEMDA, so I have to do the exponent first. And then I have to do the multiplication. 3 times 4, that's 12. And then I can do the subtraction. So f of -2, that's the first result, equals 10. So this is what I'm trying to find, right? F of -2 equals 10. Now I have to find g of -2. So g of -2 means that I'm going to substitute. Well, let me just color code this. It's a little bit better. G of -2 means I have to substitute -2 into the g of x function. So the g of x function is 4 plus x. So 4 plus -2. So I'm replacing the x for a -2, and I'm just going to do PEMDAS to this. So getting rid of the parentheses, that's 4 minus 2. So g of -2 equals 2. So that is the second result. Now the third thing that I have to do, I'm trying to find f plus g of -2, which means I have to take those two results, f of -2, and add it to g of -2. So f of -2, we define that this is going to be 10 over here. And I have to add that to g of -2, which we define to be 2. So we can say that the result, the final result, f plus g of -2 is equal to 12. To find f of -2 first, over here, find g of -2. Then once you have both results, the problem over here says add them up. So we're going to add those two numbers up, and that's how I'm going to reach my result. This is for the addition of two functions. Okay, so on the same PowerPoint, I also have another example that says g minus f of 5. This is what I'm going to try to find. So we take the same approach. That means I have to find g of 5 and subtract, on this case, because I have a negative sign in the middle, and subtract f of 5. So this is what we're going to be doing. Okay, now we're talking about the same functions, right? The f of x function, I'm going to write it again. F of x equals 3x squared minus 2. This is the given function. And then the g of x function is 4 plus x, the same ones that we used in the previous example. Okay. Now the first thing that I have to find is g of 5. So let's try to find g of 5, which means I'm going to replace all of the x's in the g function for a number 5. That's this g function over here. Okay, and then I'm going to do PEMDAS to the right side. That's 4 plus 5 is going to be 9. And I already got my first value, my first result. The second thing that I have to find is f of 5. So f of 5 means I'm going to substitute 5 into the f of x function. And my f of x function is 3x squared minus 2. So I replace the 5 for the x in the f of x function. And then I'm going to do PEMDAS, so I have to do the exponent first. 5 squared, 5 times 5, that's going to be 25. And then I have to do the multiplication. So 3 times 25, that's 75, minus 2. And that final result is going to be 73. 75 minus 2, 73. So I have those two results. Okay. Now the last step is this negative sign that I have in here. It means that g minus f of 5 is g of 5 minus f of 5. So those two results that I found, which is going to be g of 5, we defined that to be 9, minus f of 5, we defined that to be 73. So as a first step, now we have to do the actual subtraction of those two numbers. So 9 minus 73, that's going to be negative 64. And this is the result for g minus f of 5. G minus f of 5. Now, the next example is going to be multiplication. The next requested example is fg of negative 3. So taking my same f of x function to be 3x squared minus 2, and the same g of x function to be 4 plus x. Now what this problem says, fg of negative 3, it means that I have to find f of negative 3 and multiply times g of negative 3. That's what this means. Okay, so let's go ahead and find f of negative 3 first. F of negative 3 means I have to replace all of the x's in the f function for a negative 3 and see what the result is. So let's do the exponents first. So negative 3 times negative 3, that's 9. And then let's do the multiplication. So 3 times 9, that's 27. And then let's do the subtraction. So it looks like f of negative 3 is 25. Now we have to find g of negative 3 as well. So g of negative 3 is replacing all of the x's in the function for negative 3. So if you get rid of the parentheses, it's going to be 4 minus 3. 4 minus 3 is 1, so this is the value for g of negative 3. Now the question, the problem said that we have to find f of negative 3, which is f of negative 3, fg of negative 3. So this is f of negative 3 times g of negative 3. So f of negative 3, we defined this to be 25, which we got from this result, times g of negative 3, which we defined to be 1. So we can say that fg of negative 3 is equal to 25. That's a multiplication. So we have done addition, subtraction, multiplication. And now we're going to do a division of those two functions and see what the value, what result we get out of there. Okay. So division, we're asked to find f over g of 8, which means I had to find f of 8 and then divide it by g of 8. So let's find those two results. F of x, this is the given function for the millionth time, and then g of x, that's a given function for the millionth time also. So what this says is that I have to find f of 8 and then divide it by g of 8. So I have to find first, before I start, f of 8. So what is f of 8? I have to substitute 8 into the f of x function and do PEMDAS to this. So if I do the exponents, that's going to be 64. And then the next thing that I have to do is going to be the multiplication, which is going to be 192. 64 times 3 minus 2. And then 192 minus 2, that's 190. So this is the value of f of 8. And we do the same thing for the value of g of 8. So I'm going to substitute 8 into my g of x function. So g of 8 is going to be equal to 12. So what the problem is asking for is f over g of 8, which is f of 8 divided by g of 8, which is the same thing as f of 8, the value that we just found, that's 190, and the value of g of 8, it's 12. So this is what we're looking for. This will be the final answer. F over g of 8 equals 190 over 12. So then we'll have to inspect that fraction, see if we can simplify it further, or we can make it simpler, right? So just by quick inspection, I don't believe we can simplify that expression further. 190, we can simplify this to 95 over 6, and I think that'll be it. We're not able to simplify this further. So this will be the result of f over g of 8 on this case.